everyone, and thank you for joining me on another episode of The Art of Comic Writing. I'm your host, Jorge Medina. That's George with a J. And before we get to it, I'm going to ask you, like I ask you every week, to please subscribe to the channel, like, and even more importantly, and this is very important, share. Share this video out to anyone who has ever written a book, wants to write a book, a comic book, a poem. I'm going to have a lot of writers on the show every week, and we're going to talk about the do's, the don'ts, things they wish they had done, things they wish they hadn't done in their writing process or in their writing careers. And hopefully that'll help you as a new, writer to not make the same mistakes or make them and learn from them. All right. So make sure you share it. Don't forget also to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of these informative shows. That's very important. And now, a word from our sponsor. Do you have the next best-selling comic book idea but have no idea how to get started because you're an artist and not a writer, or vice versa? Then go to globalindiegroup.com and find exactly what you're looking for. Gig has a list of writers, artists, editors, colorists, letterers, even podcasts on the platform to help you bring that comic book to life. Sign up today to get started and make sure you provide the promo code WRITING at checkout for a discount. What are you waiting for? Go to globalindiegroup.com today and get started on that next best-selling comic book you've been wanting to create. I write for me. We sound like Drago from Rocky, right, when we say this? And I've heard a lot of writers say this when defending their work, and rightfully so, because if you don't write for you, then what are you writing for, and how are you ever going to get anything down on paper? However, should you only write for you and forget the fact that you got into the business of writing to sell some books? Didn't you? Okay, well, today we're going to be chatting with a writer who has several books under his belt, including a book published by Dark Horse Comics, and get his perspective on writing for a target audience. Plus, we're going to be giving him a writing prompt as a parting gift, like I like to do on the show. Okay, and without further ado, please welcome my next guest. I am very happy to have him on the show tonight and talk about writing. He's written such titles as Ghost Band, Sucker, The Cicada, and Past Tense from Dark Horse Comics. He's also a professor at Pacific Northwest College of Art, where he teaches script writing all the way from the West Coast. It is my pleasure to chat with this very talented writer. I'm a huge fan of his work. Please welcome Mr. Jason McNamara.
Jorge.
Wow, there he is. There he is.
What's going on, partner?
This.
How you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all right. How are you? How are you doing?
My house is less blurry than yours.
Yeah, I blur that thing out, but nobody knows where I am right now other than you, because we had that little conversation prior. But man, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you doing this. I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, well, you're from the homeland. I can't say no to you.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
We're both
Whenever
New
you're back in
Yorkers.
New York, you're gonna have to let me know.
Oh, you'll know. You'll get an alert from the CDC. So you mentioned I teach.
Yes.
So I've been on the West Coast for 30 years, and I've learned how to talk like a regular human being. But when I teach, occasionally I'll say something like, "Oh, I got to reach in this drawer," or "I'm just gonna go get a glass of water," and the kids are like, "Mr. Mac, where are you from exactly?" And then, of course, if I'm tired or I'm drunk, it just all comes out.
Yeah, the New York accent. You can't lose it, man. It's amazing. It's freaking amazing.
You can take the boy out of New York, but you can't take New York out of the boy.
You can't, man. You can't. Well, listen, let's jump right to it because I know you're busy. So, just like everybody, all right, so you know how this works, everybody watching. I'm going to ask Jason some questions about writing. He's going to give me his most honest answers. We're going to have a small discussion, and then at the end of the show, I'm going to give him a little writing prompt, which, he may do and not do. It's up to him. He's a busy guy. He's going to take it, maybe take 10, 15 minutes, write something down. If he loves it, he's going to say, George, I love this. He'll email it to me if he wants to, and I can post it on my website for all of you to read. Now,
I love that you're giving me homework. This is what that feels like?
That's what it is. It's low-key homework. It's low-key homework. He doesn't know what the prompt is, everybody. So that prompt is a surprise prompt at the end of the show, which I will give to him after the final question. So let's get to it. Jay, first question. You ready for this? Do you ever feel hampered or discouraged by the need to be original?
Absolutely not. And I tell my students this as well. I think I'm a firm believer that as a writer, the most important thing that you need to have is a voice, right? So we could have the same plot, and you could give it to 6 different writers, and they will interpret it 6 different ways because we are all unique in our experience and our background and our socioeconomic background, our religious background, our victories, our heartbreaks, all the things that make us us. If you can imbue the work with a personal voice that is all your own, not only do you not have to worry about being original, but you don't have any competition.
Interesting.
Because if somebody wants a Jorge story, the best place to get a Jorge story is from Jorge,
Right.
right? So if you want a Jason McNamara story, I think I tell the best ones,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
early in my career, I thought I could write any number of things, like
Yeah.
a romance, uh-uh, a western, sci-fi. I would go all over because I saw the writers that I loved could
Right.
do that.
Right.
They
Right.
were real. They had a verisimilitude that I don't. When I did the Rattler with Image Comics a few years back, I realized this is my wheelhouse. This is where I succeed the most as a writer.
Right.
If I can do something that's dark, has like funny sensibilities, and is asking questions about the world we live in. So dark morality tales with a hint of humor. I believe you have to be able to laugh to be able to feel okay about being scared. And I feel like those impulses are really similar, horror and comedy. Once I realized that I had a voice and leaned into it, it just freed me up so much. I didn't look at the person next to me at a convention. If they sold more, 20 years ago, I might be like, what is with this Bendis guy? People keep buying his books.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Does that mean I'm a horrible person? Does that mean I'm a failure? And then I came to realize, like, no, if you want that experience, he's the person to get that from. If you want my experience, this is the only place you're going to get it from, and I do it better than most.
Interesting.
If I'm next to Jeff Parker's a great writer. And if he's selling books, it's because those people wanted a Jeff Parker experience that day. And once I realized I didn't have any competition, it really freed me up to enjoy the community a lot more. Because we're New Yorkers, we're like go go go, got to get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the only person I'm really in competition with is myself. Am
I
I
love
honoring my talent? Am I treating my brain right? Do I have a discipline? Am I adhering to this? Am I giving respect to my time and talent? So no, I don't worry about being original. Actually, I thought of you today because I was working on a story, for example,
it. Right.
about a person who can steal people's talent, right?
Hmm.
Like I can shake your hand, and now that doctor doesn't know how to perform surgery,
Wow.
and I've got that talent. And I thought, oh, this is good. And I was writing it up this week, and I thought, the talent thief is a great title.
Wow.
But then I Googled it, and guess what?
Oh,
There's already a book called The Talent Thief with the same
the
premise.
premise? No.
Same premise. Yes, it's a girl. It's a little girl, and she goes around and she steals people's talent.
Oh.
But how that writer is going to tell that story is 180 degrees from how I'm going to tell the same mechanism, right? Like Groundhog's Day, Happy Death Day, and Russian Doll with Natasha
Right.
Lyonne. It's the same
Mhm.
mechanism. You're reliving the same day, but the way those writers tell those story, it imbues them with a piece of themselves, and they're very, very different in tone, execution. Those stories are doing different things with the same material.
Hmm.
So I think the more that you know who you are as a writer, and you can tap into your experiences and leave behind your inspirations, right? Like we all start, I think most writers start imitating their favorite writers, and then you grow and you leave that behind, almost like training wheels. And that's okay, I think.
Mhm.
I don't think as a writer you should try and invent the wheel. You should just make the story as much of your own as possible and imbue the work with as much of your voice and experiences and perspectives and values as possible.
It's funny, Jay, because I'll read like sometimes, and they say writers should read, and sometimes I keep myself from reading because I don't want to steal ideas. Never looking at it the way you're looking at it, almost saying, okay, maybe you should read that. Maybe you should. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise that you found that because now you
Yeah.
know there is something else out there like it, and now you're kind of more aware of like how not to sound exactly like that in a way. You know what I mean?
I
So
was never going to do a young adult book about
right, right.
a little girl discovering something about herself. I'm going to do
There
something
you go.
dark and ask a question that adults. I'm not nostalgic for my childhood. I don't do
Mm.
young skewing work in general.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, but anyway, so I think readers should write. I mean, I'm sorry, readers
Should read.
should read, but they
Writers
should
should
also
read.
listen. Listen, like
Mm.
take the bus and go to a neighborhood you don't live in. because there is an echo chamber effect if you don't expose yourself to other peoples and other cultures and lifestyles that are not your own, because every person in my book can't be a middle-aged man, right? If everyone's a middle-aged ginger, there's no nuance to it, right?
Right,
That
right,
perspective, we got plenty of middle-aged white guys telling stories. But if you can read books of other cultures and people are going through experiences that you didn't have,
right.
I'm not going to say you're going to imitate them, but you can have empathy for other people and a curiosity about them to write characters that are not your own gender, that are not your own race, that are not your own religion or lifestyle or background.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you fall into caricature as opposed to character.
Got it.
Um,
Yeah, no,
yes.
100%, 100%. So now you did mention that you were earlier. You were writing, obviously,
Mhm.
what we were talking about. How long, on average, does it take for you to write a comic script from idea to finished script? Let's just say, on average, not exact, but on average.
Okay, that's a double-edged sword because
Mm,
I can write a script pretty quickly from an outline. Uh, Not every writer writes an outline, but I try and figure everything out in a 1 to 2 page document first, where I put all the events in sequential order. And then I do what's called a beat sheet, which is I have a plan for what happens on every page.
okay.
And from a beat sheet, I just wrote a 250-page graphic novel in 10 days.
Wow. Holy cow, dude.
But I had a really, really, but that was after I did the outline, probably took me a week or two.
Right.
The beat sheet took me probably a couple of days. And then when I sat down, I was on a time limit and I knocked it out really quickly. But here's the thing: when I'm doing something like a past tense, or I'm doing a book that's really for me and personal to me, I almost write it twice. So I do the script, I get it to an artist, and then I get all the art back, and then I letter all of my books. That
Mm,
is, I put all the words on the page, and I rewrite almost every line of dialogue again and again
yeah.
over the art, because now the original text seems stale,
Mm,
or it's not taking advantage of the visuals, and I want the words and the visuals to work in concert together to manipulate the audience to
yeah.
create a sensation.
Yeah.
So rewriting the dialogue. I will take as much time as they give me. With Dark Horse, I went down to the last day. I was like, "Oh, I want to tweak this. I want to tweak this." And is it a then or a then? Like I was just wordsmithing, obsessing over every little word.
Right. Right.
So
Were
I'll
you
take
the
as much time as you give me.
Were you the letterer on past tenses
Hmm.
also?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, there's a freedom to lettering your own stuff, man. I do it myself too, and you're
Oh,
right.
you get it.
That's almost like the last line of editing
Hmm.
is you lettering your own book, because then you can, like you said, there's a panel on the page, this art, and you're like, oh, okay, nah, this person's saying this now, and it turns into the Stan Lee method, right? It just turns into that right off the bat, because you're the last person to touch that page, which is kind of freeing to me, I think. You know?
Often I'm taking words off the page.
Oh,
Like the
interesting.
artist did such a good job. I'm like, you know what? This is redundant. We don't need it. It's like
Mm,
it creates what I think of like a double beat.
mm, okay.
Like, for example, if you ever see like Wolverine reaching into the refrigerator and he's
Mm,
saying, "I need a beer." Well, the visual is telling me that he's going for a beer. He doesn't need to say. He should be
yeah.
saying something else,
Right,
like,
right, yeah, yeah.
I picked the wrong week to go on a diet or something.
Yeah, something different, something else.
Something,
I
something that
hear
gives it
that.
contrast and flavor. Yeah. So
I hear
lettering,
that.
I obsess over lettering. I'm a slow letterer, which is
Yeah.
why I would never get paid to letter someone else's book
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah. No, I
I
got
would
you.
I would rewrite it.
Yeah, and just to follow up on the 10 days, because that's incredible, dude.
Mhm.
How many hours a day were you like sitting behind a desk, like writing?
Probably 4 or 5.
4 or 5. Okay, so you don't do like an 8 hour day of just writing. Like that would just be too much.
I think there's diminishing returns. You have to know when your sweet spot is
Mm,
for writing. Like some writers swear they do it first thing in the morning, they get it out of the way.
right.
I like to go to the gym, take the dog to the park, and then know that I have nothing else I have to do that day except write. So I usually start like around between like noon and 2 and go to like 6 or 7.
Right.
And that's just when I feel like in the morning I've got too much energy. I can't sit still.
Gotcha.
I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
go and I want to pick up heavy things and glare at strangers.
Yeah, you're doing research. That's research. That's not talking. It's called research. So you teach young minds, writers.
Mhm.
You're a scriptwriter professor. What are the biggest mistakes you find new writers make?
Oh boy. Um, this could be a 3-hour TED talk,
The
but
list is long.
the list is long. But I will say, conflating world building with plot. So you can create this fully realized, fleshed out world, but that in and of itself is not a story. We need a point of view character who's moving through that world and uncovering that world piece by piece by piece, right? Um, and often they will just start like this person's been living here for 100 years and these are all the rules, and I'm like, this is an almanac, it's not a story.
Hmm.
So I love world building, but you have to have a story mechanism that pulls us through that world. The best way to do that is with a point of view character, because then you're experiencing all this stuff with them for the first time. They're like, oh my God, this is happening. You're feeling that feeling with the character, and then you have a bond with them. If it's passe to them and they've already been there, you don't have that connection. You're sort of emotionally distant from it all. So I'd say world building. Another thing is they will just have pages and pages and pages and pages of people in a cafe talking. And I
Hmm.
say, well, it's not really visually interesting to have 10 pages of people talking in a cafe. And yes, Tarantino might have a 10-minute scene of two people in a cafe. Um, he's like the only one that can get away with that, really.
Right, right,
Unless you're like
yeah.
a French New Wave filmmaker, then I will watch you cook an entire roast in real time.
No, but you're so right about that, man. Because we got to remember it's a visual medium, and unless you know,
Yeah,
and again, you're talking about Quentin. That's still a moving image, right? There are things that are happening that are keeping you entertained. Whereas when you're reading a comic, you're just flipping through pages and nothing is moving. So if you're just reading, you're probably gonna not you're probably gonna put it down unless, like you said, it's some incredible, the most incredible dialogue you've ever read in your life.
right. Or if it's at the end of a story and like,
Mm,
what
mhm.
happened to all the people that died, or so like I think I love the epilogue of Red Dead Redemption, where John is riding around, he runs into old friends, and he gets a little like, what happened to you since the big events? But you
Yeah.
don't start a story that inert, that slow.
Right, right,
You
right.
really have to earn it. So pacing is a big one. Conflating world building with plot is another one. Um, and just like, is it visually, should it be a comic? I guess is the question you should ask yourself. Is this a podcast? Is this a novel? Is this a textbook? I
Hmm.
was working with one student and we're like, I think this would work better as like a nonfiction tutorial book.
Wow.
Sort of like a Scott McCloud type thing, where this
Yeah.
person's really passionate about something in the real world and they want to introduce it to people. And I was like, if you put it in a narrative, it gets too buried. So we're bringing it to the surface and just making cartoon characters introduce this thing.
Yeah. Interesting.
So yeah,
Yeah, you know what? And it's crazy because I think as a new writer, you don't realize that you're making these mistakes until somebody points them out. And you have to be willing to take that feedback and change it. Because some people aren't. Some people are like, what are you talking about? My teacher has no idea what they're talking about. It's like, yeah, they probably do, dude. You may want to, look into it, look into it.
well, that's what an editor does. And I tell my kids,
Mhm.
like, I'm not writing your stories, but I want to help you problem solve. And that's really what comic writing is. That's what most creative things are. Can you effectively problem solve? And if you can
Right.
do that, you can. We're not the first people to make comics. This is a well-traveled road. If you want to make a film, millions of indie filmmakers have gone before you and solved a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm just trying to help them find their story and all this minutia. Because when I was growing up, we didn't have a comic writing class. I just took the same screenwriting course over and over. That lady was sick of me. I took it again and again and again because I wanted to know how stories worked. And
Yeah.
now I can look at I'll watch the first 15, 20 minutes of a movie and I'll turn to my wife and go, this is what's going to happen. These are the conflicts. This is the theme. And this is how it's going to end. And she hates it because I'm right majority of the time.
You know what? It's
Yeah,
funny because you start watching things differently when you
sure.
are into the weeds of writing. You start looking at things, and sometimes it kind of. I try to watch things twice. Once like just to enjoy it, not even think about it, and then the second time to go in and okay, interesting. Like The Last of Us, I was watching that show and I was like, okay. The first time I watched it, I was like, let me just see if I can enjoy it. And the second time around, I was like, oh, okay, this is what they were doing here. This is what's going on
Yeah.
there. And you're
You
right, you
see
can
the
almost predict it.
yeah, you see the fingerprints.
Yeah, you see the fingerprints for sure. Now this is the final question here.
Okay. I'm
Jay.
ready.
So and this is the one that I think I've talked to a lot of my friends about target audiences, right? And I just want to know, what is your viewpoint on target audiences? Do you write with one in mind, or do you typically just write for you? And I think originally you started out by saying you kind of just can't think about that kind of stuff too much. But what is your viewpoint on target audiences?
Um, Well, I'm not the most successful writer on the planet, so my perspective may not be correct, but I always think of me going to the comic book shop when I was a kid
Mm.
and how excited I would get and what would inspire me from a cover or from a concept or an idea. Now, my tastes have changed. I don't read as many superhero comic books as I used to, and I don't find those are stories I want to tell because they're already. So there are two companies that do that much, much better than I ever could already.
That is right.
Um, but I do write for myself, and I think what would I like to discover on the shelf? And I have peculiar tastes. I don't have mainstream tastes, and I think that's good because if you appeal to everybody, you also appeal to nobody,
Mm.
right? There's this idea of project by committee, and there are these engineered pieces of entertainment that are meant to appeal to as so many people as possible, but they have no staying power. They have no lasting power. So the more idiosyncratic you can be, the more specific you can be, the better I think the story will be in the end. Will it sell well? You'd have to ask a better selling author. But I can tell you that the books I write are wholly mine, and that I don't know that I have mainstream tastes, but you're going to get a step into my brain and how I think a story should work and what it should accomplish. As far as target audiences go, I've consulted on projects that have a very specific demographic,
Right.
like 7 to 10,
Mm.
or it's for a marketing thing. And I also worked for the Golden State Warriors for 5 years.
No kidding.
Yeah, yeah, I was a consultant. I worked remotely.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
but we talked a lot about how they introduce content to their audience, and you look at their values. Their company values was always my compass. So I just moved into this space, but I do have my own personal values that I have written and printed up, and I hang them on the wall.
Mm.
And I think as a creator, you should have a set of values. And I'm not saying you should die on those hills every day, but you shouldn't do anything that conflates or contradicts with those values. For example, and I never said this out loud before to anyone, but I don't put guns in my books.
Okay.
Like you'll just never see a gun in any of my books.
Yeah.
And just because I feel like that is fetishized so much elsewhere and there's so much real world gun violence in the world that I don't want to support that.
Hmm.
But I've never said I'm anti-gun.
Right.
Um, I just don't feel like I need to contribute to that aesthetic. So stuff like that. If you can have a set of values that you run everything through, and even with social media, before I press send on
Hmm.
something, my little hot take, I look at my values and I go, does this contradict with the person I want to be? And sometimes it does. Most of the time, it doesn't.
Right.
I want to support other people. I want to be positive to the community, and I have to remind. And this is advice to older me, I have to remind myself I'm not in competition with someone else, and that a rising tide lifts all ships,
Yeah.
and that the healthier comics are, the better comics are for everybody. We all do this because we love comics, right?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
father taught me how to read with comics.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my target audience is me, and that's a target audience of one, which is not enough to keep any project afloat. But if you like something and you believe in a project, there's probably 100,000 people behind you who also would
Yeah.
like the same thing. The
Yeah.
trouble is finding them. And I think if there's a place where I am less successful is introducing a book to an audience. I love writing books, but there's a whole different voice to introducing them to an audience, and that is much. I'm still developing that voice,
Right. Right.
and
No,
I'm open to feedback on that.
listen, I go through your website and I see a lot of sold out things, and I'm like, so I know you say that maybe you're not, but you are. I believe you are. I believe you have found success and you're doing it your way, man. And that to me is inspiring as a person who's also trying to break into and not break into the big two anymore, because who does break to, I mean, it's like I just want to write my stories, but I definitely want to reach audiences like you have. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Listen, dude. I read your, and I told you this before we came on. I read your book, The Martian Confederacy, and I loved it, man. I loved it. I was like, dude, this is different. You
Yeah.
talk about westerns and stuff. There was some western stuff in there. You know what I mean? And you talk about the characters and how you had the POV character, and that was the
Hmm.
main character. And I was like, dude, I'm following the story along, and it inspired me to write some of the stuff that I write now, and I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that, and
That's amazing. I'm so
yeah, dude, I'm
I'm
telling
shocked.
you.
I'm shocked to hear that
I'm
because I'm
telling you.
just a dude in the cottage with a dog
Yeah,
and a
right.
drinking problem and a Wi-Fi
Oh,
connection, and you never know who is you never know who's affecting the works. I really appreciate hearing that.
No, you
We
really
did do.
don't.
I did write a third volume, and Paige and I are
Yes.
probably going to do it this year. That's the plan.
Really? All right.
Is that we'll
Cool.
finish it, and then I'm
Awesome.
going to go back to the other ones and correct all those typos, and then do like a big, just like an omnibus of all
Yes.
three volumes,
Oh,
and
I'm in.
recolor it too in full color.
I'm in, dude. I'm in.
I
Yeah,
didn't
no,
know that
I love
anyone was
it.
interested in it, but now we got a sale.
Bro, I'm telling
I'm
you
going to
right
be
now.
email. Can
You
you
have
order 3,000 copies, please?
yeah, dude.
I hope
I
you got a
really
big family.
hey, I'm Latino. Anyway, so yes, sir. I appreciate you coming on the show. I have actually a bonus question.
Okay.
Here's my bonus question. All right. You ready
Hmm.
to answer
Yeah.
this one? What's your favorite YouTube channel and why is it Get Your Meds?
I'm sorry. What's my favorite Pornhub channel? Pornhub channel, and why does it get your
Damn it.
meds?
See, damn it. See, I
Because
knew
they've
it.
got thick redheads who hate their fathers. That's why.
You're an animal. I love it. You've been planning that answer the whole time. Oh man. All right. Well, listen. Let's end it on this. Let's end it on this. I
Mhm.
promised a writing prompt,
Okay.
and so here it is. Now, again, this is if at any point you have some time and you want to do this 10 to 15 short story, a scene in a comic. I don't know, whatever. Here's the prompt:
Hmm.
a duffel bag on the side of the road. That's
Hmm.
it. That's the prompt. A duffel bag on the side of the road.
How many words?
Uh, could be anything. 250, I'm gonna say. No, that's nothing. 10 to 15 minutes of writing. Whatever you can get in 10 to 15 minutes. That's how I've kind of broken it down. And it could
All
be a
right.
short story. It could be just a scene in a comic. Whatever you want to do. You know what I mean?
A
But
duffel bag on the side of the road.
on the side of the road.
It's
That's
not going
it.
to be good news, I'll tell you right now.
I had a feeling. This is Jason McNamara, baby. Oh, Jay, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Jorge,
Good luck. Good luck with everything you're doing. I can't wait. I mean, listen, we're recording this in the past for the future and the present. So don't have my copy of past tense, but I already ordered that. I told you that, and I can't wait to get it. Um,
well, I
much success to you.
hope I'm still alive when this airs.
Oh, you will be. Much success to you, sir. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you have stuff to do. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate yours, George.
All right.
Jorge, to correct me on that. It says
So
George on the screen, but I know
it
you're
says
Jorge.
it says George with a J, baby. So
People don't read. I'm a writer. People don't read.
people don't read. All right,
All right,
Jay. Thank
Jorge.
you
Thank
so
you, my
much.
friend.
And that, my friends, was Jason McNamara. Oh man, thank you so much, Jay, for coming on. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you watching. And I hope you guys took a lot out of that interview. I actually forgot to ask him one of the questions that I had on here was what sources to become a better writer would you recommend? And we were off the air, and he mentioned lettering your own books, which is interesting because he said that in lettering his own book, he figured out that where to put the words on the page helped the eye move around the page. So lettering his own book, kind of helped them put, maybe a balloon on the top and then have it move to the bottom of the page so that your eye is constantly moving through the page, which I thought was very interesting. So that was one of his tips on how to become or what's resources to use. Obviously, we talked a little bit about reading, reading other stories and just being aware, maybe listening, doing a lot of listening when you step out of your house and do some listening. So there was some really good stuff on this show. I loved what he said. If you appeal to everyone, you have you run the risk of appealing to no one. So that was very interesting about target audiences. If you agree or disagree with Jason, put it on the comments below. Share the video, subscribe, and remember there is that writing prompt. If you guys want to get down with the writing prompt tonight, you can. It is a duffel bag on the side of the road. Okay, if you write something 10 to 15 minutes, a short story, whatever it is, and you feel comfortable and you want me to post it on my website, my email will be on the show notes there at the bottom as well. Let me know and I will post that on the website. All right, guys, thank you so much again for listening, watching, and being a part of the show. Don't forget, again, share it, share it, share it, share it, and hit that bell so that you know when we come on the show. I try to do this once a week. So, anyway, that's all I got for today, guys. So, just remember, keep writing. Peace.